Dude, you are getting well. Dude, welcome to season 2 of Dude, You're Getting Well. I'm so excited for our next guest. I have been chasing him down for like a year. He's someone whose work I follow on the regular, who inspires me, who I look for relationship advice from time to time, whether he knows it or not, from a man who's led with his partner. I'm really excited for this next guest. He's a speaker, author, relationship nerd, human behavior expert, and he's a dad and founder of the Relationships. Welcome, Jason Gaddis.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you here. Jason, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a little kid?
Extreme skier.
Extreme skier. Cool. So how did you get from, well, first of all, I don't know, but that's the first time I've gotten that answer. What is someone in your family an extreme skier? How did you have
My,
that on your radar?
yeah, my dad was a three-time All-American ski racing champion,
Oh, wow.
and so I grew up in a skiing family, and I got into racing. But what I really cared about was just having fun with my friends,
Mhm.
and so we started jumping off cliffs and making movies, and I thought I was going in that direction, and then I got really injured a lot.
Oh man, so you're full extreme. You're going like X Games champion.
But yeah, this is I'm pretty old, so this is before X Games. Had that come out, man, that would have been cool.
What was that 80s ski film, like the epic extreme ski film, the
Well, there were
cult
many,
classic?
right? With Glenn Plake, that one with the guy with the mohawk, that one.
No, this is the one that has all the I'll think of it in a minute, but it just made me think of you when you said that. I just watched this the other day. It's on the tip of my tongue.
It's not Licensed to Thrill, was it? Or
I
Warren
think it
Miller?
was. That sounds like it. It sounds like Licensed to Thrill. It's someone's like homemade documentary. They put all their own music in it, and it
Hmm.
was a bunch of guys skiing off cliffs. And I think it was one of the first films to show that.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is sort of off topic, but I'm fascinated because I just got back into skiing at age 43. So I'm recovering from snowboarding injuries last week. So this is like fresh for me. So how did you get from, eyes on the skis to becoming a human behavior expert or a relationship nerd?
Well, a
Can you
lot
walk
of
us through your journey?
yeah. So I was partly doing the extreme skiing stuff to get attention and to get belonging and to get liked, by
Mm.
people and respect from male friends, um, and I was boozing it up a lot, doing a lot of drugs, smoking a lot of weed, and having very short-term relationships that wouldn't last more than a few months. I think my longest was a year, in my all through my 20s, and I just would never let women get that close to me. I was just pretty guarded around my heart. I was not emotionally intelligent. I was pretty jammed up. So when they would have needs and want to talk and want kind of want into my vulnerability, I would push them away and find a new partner that felt better. And I repeated that many times. And then I was sitting in the Whole Foods parking lot in a Subaru breaking up with another awesome woman. Uh, and I found myself saying out loud, I think I'm the problem. And I'd never really said that in the same way as I did that in that moment. And she's like, yeah, you think so? And I was like, yeah, I actually do. I think there's something here. And I don't know, it liberated me because I thought the problem was always her. And when I recognized the problem might be me, I felt some power in that. Like I can do something about that. And that's when just a few months later, I was in grad school and moved to Boulder, Colorado, and to study myself in psychology.
And how long ago was that?
20 years ago.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
beautiful. So you went through a lot of difficult relationships. Sounds like you had a hard time accessing vulnerability, and you started studying that in yourself, when did you find that relationships started working? What were some of the things that started making a difference of them lasting? Or when did this start to shift to where you had healthy relationships?
Sometime in graduate school, I met my wife, now wife. She was 2 years ahead of me in the program, and we connected. We had a strong connection, and I was now ready at that point to look in the mirror. Previous to this, I wasn't really that self-reflective, and I was really geeked out on it. At this point, it was a high value of mine, and I wanted to understand like what made me tick in the context of relationships. And so we started dating, and we had a lot of problems initially, kind of because I never had ever stayed with it through conflict. I always just left. Um, so it was new for me to stay and to not run away, to try to stay and work it out and talk it out. And two budding therapists, you can imagine, it was like it would take us a long time to get to the bottom of things, but like hours. We were very inefficient.
Mm.
But I started getting my reps in, and I just started really liking the process, even though it was very triggering for me. And I thought it was fascinating. And just now was kind of had new eyes, and I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. Kind of endlessly interesting. And we
Yeah.
started getting better at it, and eventually got married. And now we, of course, still have problems like the rest of humanity, but we know how to work through them.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that journey with us. You and that you still have problems today. It's nice to hear people just being real. I and I heard you start to look at, take that on yourself and be ready for it. Um, Most people told me I was trying not to be in a relationship when I met my wife, and I was finally working on myself, and then working on a lot of things in relationship turned out to be really difficult for me because we were just sort of triggering each other back and forth, just reacting off of each other's reactions. And even though we had tools, we didn't seem to be able to apply it. And as two budding therapists who had the tools, like, what do you think made the difference of? I mean, you said you were willing to stay, but
Mhm.
what do you see anything that really made the difference of starting to make it work? I mean, that you guys held on through, like, what was the hardest lesson you've had to learn in this relationship?
Um, we both were, because we both were studying psychology. It became really interesting to us to be like, oh, I think you're projecting your dad onto me. And there's projections, such a thing as projections. They actually go on. I was like, what is that? So I think we had a leg up because we were both studying this. And we did see a couple times different therapists. We had one therapist who saw us a couple times, and it was really, really impactful. We didn't stay long because we are the kind of people that we apply what we learn. So we're like, cool, thanks for the coaching. And we actually improved, so that helped. We had good friend circles. I was in a men's group at the time. So my male friends in particular, would, challenge me when I was kind of running my story about her that was negative or blamey. And um, yeah, I feel like there was things like that made a huge difference. And then again, like you said, both of us were extremely willing to look at our part.
Thank you for sharing that too. And you mentioned in the show notes, that you really felt like embedded in our traumas and challenges are our life purpose. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what are the traumas and challenges that you experienced, and how did they become your life purpose?
So I grew up in a family that was kind of a denial family. Like, we're fine, everything's fine here. I like Beaver Cleaver. Like, the veneer looked good on the outside. All my friends would say, "Man, you have a great family." But I think behind the scenes, there was a lot of neglect emotionally, and a lot of relational misattunement, and then a lot of me just conforming to the family norms and rules, and at the expense of my integrity and my truth. So that was just chronic for me, for my entire upbringing. And then my mom and I had a kind of a fucked up, emotionally enmeshed relationship. I sort of emotionally took care of her, and um, she had some of her own mental health challenges, and um, yeah, so just the combination of mom and dad and their particular styles created enough kind of wounding in me that I eventually, finally, that created enough wounding in me. I would say it like this: that had me have a lot of lame relationships and not very deep relationships, particularly intimate relationships. Like I had a lot of friends, but I felt like no one knew me, kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and then eventually, when I started working on myself and started studying psychology and studying relationships for a living, I connected the dots. Like, oh, like that all happened so that I could do this and do my art and do my gift in the world.
That's really beautiful. And what do you feel is your gift in your art for the world today?
Yeah, my sole mission is to on the planet. Why I'm here is to help people be who they are.
Beautiful. And what are some of the ways you do that?
Well, I particularly look through the lens of a relationship, right? Because it's in relationship with others that we compromise ourselves, we hold back, we let people walk all over us. And what we start to learn, if you start to pay attention, a lot of people are in strategies to get love and connection and avoid hurt and pain. And so and this starts in childhood, as you probably know, where children learn what the big people want and they learn what the big people don't want. And they start to become who the big people want them to be instead of who they are. For example, I looked up to my dad, amazing guy, intimidating as hell, athlete, extremely successful athlete. So the way to get his love was to not be sensitive and not be emotional, which was who I really was, and not be artistic, and instead be an athlete and to push myself and to override my feelings, to stuff my feelings, to act tough on the outside, to act like I didn't care when I really did care. So I did that for a couple decades, and then I finally realized, like, actually, that's not me, right? And so people are and then you get into marriage, and people are not being themselves. And what's great about marriage is it forces to the surface your true colors, right? It's very hard to hide in a marriage, like people do, but it's pretty hard to hide because your partner starts to irritate the shit out of you. You start to get triggered. You start to get upset. Your baggage and your kind of sloppiness, and you don't care as much. You take them for granted, and you start acting kind of like an asshole sometimes. And all of that is to help us grow. Like you're trying to like figure out who you actually are, and can I actually be myself here and stay married and get the connection I want? And a lot of people have it that I can't be myself and get the connection I want. I've got to be someone else. I've got to contort myself. I've got to dim this part of myself and accentuate this part of myself. And when you're in an act, and when you're in an act, eventually that falls apart in a marriage. You can't act. You can't keep acting.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what are some of the things? I mean, you mentioned, right, like how we were raised as children, and now you're a father too. Like, what's one of the hardest lessons you think you faced as a father?
Hmm. Um, Probably, I think the hardest thing is to continue to be committed to who my children are, not who I want them to be.
Mm.
Yeah, that's, I think, over the years, my kids are now 14 and 12. And as they change and evolve, and as their values start to emerge and they start to care about the things they care about that are different than I care about, right? It's letting go of what I kind of superimposing my values onto them and really celebrating their values and who they're becoming. Because it confronts all the hidden agendas I have for them.
It's like that thing with your father, right? You're facing that now as a
Exactly.
father with them,
Exactly.
and trying to create open expectations. And you're also so are you an artist as well?
I am.
Is that your work behind you?
No, I wish that
Oh, I've been admiring that.
yeah, thanks. It's a cool red-tailed hawk.
Yeah.
Abstract, of course. Yeah, I was a art major for a year in college, and I was my favorite. I had in my 12 years of education, I had one good teacher, and he was my art teacher. He was an amazing
Mm.
man, Mr. Bill. So a graphic artist, like I love to draw, paint. I don't do it as much anymore. I do spoken word poetry now. I do, I see my work in the world as art now. I'm starting to own that more versus I do business. I teach people relationships. Now it's like this is all an expression of my art.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, and I can see that in the work that you do. How do you feel it? How have you been able to make time for your relationship, your business, your children, um, yourself? How do you find the balance in that way with what you're doing now and what you're creating?
Yeah, totally, man. Curious what you would say to that too. It's tricky. I feel really at balance in this moment with my family. Like I'm not working too quote too much, whatever that means. And to me, it means that my kids start to get they start to feel a little neglected, and my wife starts to feel not considered and not prioritized. That's when I know I'm out of balance, and we have an agreement that she just lets me know, like, hey, I don't feel like a priority, and that wakes me up out of my trance of working too much. So, but I feel pretty balanced right now. I've got a great team, and I delegate, getting better at delegation. Um, but there were times early on that was tough, working 70 hours a week and staying, putting the kids down and going back to work, kind of thing.
Mm.
Trying to get this thing off the ground, and thinking I had to do it myself. So I had some hard lessons to learn about. No, it's okay to delegate, and people can help you, and
Yeah, what a
and
wonderful
prioritizing.
thing.
Yeah, prioritizing myself is always that's still an edge, man. Walking, I love just going on a walk by myself. It's like one of my favorite things to do, and I often neglect doing that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. Thank you for being so honest here,
yeah,
and you work with your wife as well. Am
that's
I
right.
correct? You all have done some work together. As someone who's worked with their partner and we're always still navigating that, what have you found? Um, what keeps it working for you all? How are you able to spend that time together? As parents and as co-creators, and is there any type of structure or boundaries or agreements you have in place that really supports a nurturing environment for that?
Well, to be clear, we don't. She's not like working in the business doing anything.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a really cool thing I have. So I can't advise people on. I don't know what it's like to have a business partner and also a spouse. Like we're not business partners. We run a family together. That's kind of where we're business partners. But in the business, she comes in more as a guest faculty teacher. We do podcasts together, and then we're co-leading a 9-month training for coaches on how to work with couples. We just started yesterday, actually. That's really cool, and it was intense. Probably like anyone who works with their spouse on projects or full time. That we get into it, like because I just see all the ways in which it's faster and easier to do it by myself, but it's better to do it together. But it's slower. Is my experience.
Yeah, I've been there. And so, tell us about this program. This sounds fascinating. This 9-month training you're doing. Congratulations, by the way, for getting it off the ground.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I've been training relationship people to become relationship coaches for years. And so that training is called RCT. It's a 9-month journey on how to become a relationship coach. And so that's for coaches or therapists or people who've never been a coach. And then there's after you get done with that, or if you're already a coach or already a therapist, you can also try this couples coaching training, which is for us a different skill. A lot of people think relationship coaching is you're already working with couples. And that, I think for some people that's true. For us, it's a different skill set. If I'm coaching you on your marriage, and you're showing up and your wife's not here, that's a very different session than if your wife shows up and now the two of you here. I call that a couples coaching session, not a relationship coaching session, just to delineate that. So her and I lead a couples coaching training on how to work with couples because it's so complex and couples are very difficult, especially if they're in the shitter and they're stuck in blame and they're just pointing the finger at each other. That's hard. Um, we all know people like that, and it's not easy to sit and help two people get more mature and to grow up and to communicate better. And so we have a whole arsenal of tools and a model and stuff to help people work through that.
Awesome. Yeah, tell us about it. My wife and I are like, we've done a lot of things together, and we're sort of at this place where we realize we'd like some new tools. Like some of our tools aren't working as well as they used to. So what are some of the ways you work with like what's something that we might do of yours if we were like
Like
looking
if
to
you were
upgrade?
clients,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so one of the things there's like 6 elements to this training. One of the principles I'd share here without going into all the details of the training.
Is this the relationship school
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw on your
So it's,
Instagram? Great. Cool.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. I follow you there too.
yeah. Um, so this we help coaches. So there's how to help coaches, right? And then there's how to help the couple.
Right.
So if we're helping you and your wife, let's say,
Yeah,
um,
I'm talking about, yeah, as like humans, not
yeah,
coaches,
right.
just like,
There's just a couple, just as a partnership.
yeah. I mean, we had to work through not coaching each other for long enough, and we've co-led. We're in a band together. We
Right. Wow.
do a lot of stuff together, but that's part of the, there in that comes the conflict, right? Like all
Yeah,
the things come up. So sorry,
that's
continue.
cool. You guys are co-creators like that. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I respect that a lot because it's not. I
thank
know it's
you.
not.
No, it's not.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the principles is that we have that you're probably already doing is standing for three. So what that means is I take a stand for my success, your success, and our success. Because you're two individuals, right? And your wife plays whatever instrument, you play whatever instrument, and you have each other's back on becoming a better musician individually, right? And then there's what you play together and having your backs together on the we. And the we is the hardest one because a lot of us can, yeah, I'm take a stand for myself all day long, right? It's all about me, myself, and I. But in a marriage or a business partnership, it gets more complicated. And how do I consider your feelings while I'm being true to myself? How do I consider what you want while I'm, believing in me and setting boundaries and want to do what I want to do? How do I keep you in mind? So that's standing for
Especially if they feel like conflict with each
yeah,
other. Yeah.
yeah. And then another one is the conflict repair cycle, probably the biggest one that we teach, and that is what my book is about, which is so important, which is the view that for the rest of your life in a high stakes relationship like a marriage or a band or a business partnership, you're going to have adversity, you're going to have conflict. And it's through conflict and repairing the conflict that builds security and strength in the system or the dyad. It's not the absence of conflict. So a lot of people still have the belief that if I find the one, meet the right person, no conflict, I scored. And it's like, okay, you scored, but you're not going to have a secure, strong partnership because there's no stress making the system stronger.
Hmm.
Stress is required, just like building muscle is required. You have to actually push against, you have to do resistance training to strengthen muscles, right? Um, it's the same in a relationship. You need resistance, you need conflict, you need adversity, you need stress to learn how to be stronger as a team. And it doesn't mean you have to have drama and conflict all the time. That's not what I'm talking about. It means you have to get very good at the repair part of conflict, meaning cleaning up the mess after you get in a fight and there's distance and some feelings are hurt or there's quietness or someone's withdrawn and someone's shut down and someone's blaming. It's after that you clean it up. Man, you two are so strong. So I imagine you and your wife are pretty strong because you've been together a while, you've been in a band, you do a bunch of things together. That's huge. So if you're getting good at repair, then that's where it's at.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, that's great. I really get a lot out of hearing, just reminded that it's, great relationships aren't without conflict. And even hearing that conflict can strengthen us, it immediately made me think of a baby tree. And I've heard, it needs to blow in the wind, it needs
Yeah.
to move around so it can get stronger. Um, and so it reminds me of something like that. And uh, what do you find are some of the main? I mean, you've been doing this a while now. Oh, and you mentioned your book too. Can you tell us a little bit about your book? What's the name of your book?
Yeah, Getting to Zero: How to Work Through Conflict in Your High Stakes Relationships.
All right, Getting to Zero. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes when we send this out too for everyone listening.
And the punchline of the book is essentially zero is the good place. Like we all want to get back to a good place after we've had a disconnect, right, or a fight with someone, or hopefully most of us want to get back to a good place. The book is how to do that. That's how do we get back to a good place. That's what the book is about.
Mm, beautiful. And what had you create this book?
So many unresolved conflicts in my life, so many failed relationships, so many shitty conflict experience, so many fistfights and um, just fights and challenges and silence and just being a sensitive man and sensitive boy below my mask. It was always painful for me when things didn't work out or people left my life or I left or yeah. So I wanted to create a guidebook for people to do better here because I think we're living in a time where we could do a lot better here, and I want to contribute to that problem.
Mm, thank you for that so much. Yeah, I really believe if we had a relationship class in high school or something like that somewhere earlier, and it would be so wonderful to be able to start practicing these tools before we're just in like older and broken for some
Yeah,
people, in relation to feel like this is unrepairable or we're just repeating these patterns that we can't stop because they're so old or ingrained.
yeah, amen.
um, do you work with couples on or individuals on trauma as well? I saw that's something you
I
mentioned.
I used to. I spent many years in the mental health field and mental health centers, family therapists, working with teens, drug addicted teens, trauma. Did several trauma trainings, and so I understand it and work well with it. But it got pretty intense for me, being as
Yeah.
sensitive as I am. So I had to step away from that work and change. Eventually I moved from therapy to coaching because I liked coaching as a frame works with, you could say, higher functioning people, even though plenty of coaching clients are not that high functioning. Um, but the frame of coaching invites like a container that's like, let's go from good to great, or let's set goals and get stronger and healthier. And whereas therapy sometimes is like, let's just talk about trauma or let's talk about what's wrong. And so I wanted to shift that in myself, and so I did. So I don't do psychotherapy anymore. I don't do trauma work anymore. But
Hmm.
I got all the tools. If I'm coaching someone and we get into some intense stuff, I know how to navigate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that, and that's a great explanation of sort of the difference between therapy and coaching. And I studied drama therapy some in school, and I talked to my therapist a lot. That I realized, you know what? I don't know if I want to be a therapist. I want to be like more out there on the court and action
Right.
oriented. And I noticed I got really good at saying things in therapy that wasn't, but I wasn't necessarily changing my patterns in my life. And
Yeah.
I was also afraid to have someone hold me accountable for that. So coach was a really powerful thing. My wife and I are currently just very openly looking for a new program to go into together, some new framework
Oh, cool.
to kind of up level our relationship. And so I always find like it's interesting that I've had 3 guests on relationships this month. It was scheduled
Nice.
over the last 6 months. Like we didn't even plan that, but it's become so much on that. And I just see, we're all in relationship with each other, right?
Yeah.
Everything's some kind of relationship, and so it's really beautiful to see someone like you out there doing this work and on the court and talking about the struggles you face as well as the successes. um, so I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you and you making it work to be here.
Yeah.
um,
Cool, man.
I want to say to everyone listening, thank you for listening, whether it's live right now or on the podcast later. You listening really makes a difference as well, and subscribing, commenting, that helps spread this message. um, it really takes some things for guests to clear their schedule and show up and give their time so generously. So, Jason, I really want to honor you for that. Where can we find your book?
Of course. It's on all the places: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Audible. I read the book on Audible, which was really fun for me. I'm a book consumer on Audible too. I like
Hmm.
listening to books. I like audio stuff.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
the downside of the book is this or the audiobook is there's a lot of practical exercises and tools that
Hmm.
if you're running or working out or commuting, so I'm like, you might want to get the book because
Yeah, I
you get
get it anyway. I love the visuals and the write notes
right.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to support that too. Um, what are some of the main? So you've been. I was asking this earlier, but I didn't get around to it. You've been in this field for a while and working with relationships for a while, and what do you feel like are some of the main themes you see and why relationships don't work?
But honestly, the biggest one is people's inability and unwillingness to be with their own activation or their partners. Um, it really
Can you
comes
say a
down
little
to
bit more? I mean, I understand what you mean by activation, but for people who don't, can you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, yeah. So if you and I are in a relationship and I get triggered um, because you say something frequently in our relationship, and I get annoyed, and I don't know how to really work through that. It's so agitating over here, right, that I can't sleep at night. Um, my nervous system feels jacked up. I feel tense. I feel irritable, and I don't know how to get to a good place with you. And I'm not willing to learn. I'm eventually going to end this relationship or find a way to get you to end it or something, right? Because I can't figure it out. I can't work through this hard stuff. And that seems to be the crux. I call it the challenging or conflict stage of a relationship. A lot of people don't make it past that because security is on the other side of the challenging stage. The next stage of relationships is building strength and security. But you can
Mhm.
only do that if you embrace conflict and are willing to learn and put your student hat on. And honestly, sadly, too many people, too many adults want the easy road and they don't want to do the harder work of looking in the mirror and being with their triggers and learning how to work with them and empathize with the other person's feelings. And so that's the number one reason in my experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And then I believe you touched on this earlier with the conflict repair cycle. But what do you find are the things that for couples that do make it and do, you know, stay with it long term? What do you find are some of the themes that of what works?
Yeah. So I teach a concept called LUFU, Lufu, and it stands for listen until the person feels understood.
Mm,
LUF. And so I teach people to make a commitment to their partner that they're going to listen to until the other person, not them, the other person feels understood. Because I used to, with my wife, when I was dense and confused, she'd say, you're not understanding me. And I'd say, yes, I am. And we'd argue about that. And I'm like, this is stupid. I did that for a couple of years, and then I was like, okay, that's not working. I think I'm going to change the rules so that I don't understand her until she says she feels understood. And
yeah.
that changed everything for us.
Wow. Yeah. Way to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, yeah, it was a big turning point. And then empathy is my hardest thing for me personally. When my wife's really upset and has strong opinions about something, I want to get into an argument rather than empathize and validate her feelings. So empathy and validation move the needle. Also, so three things. So let's say four things: listening like a badass, right? Taking responsibility for your part. Great couples do that. Both people. They validate each other's feelings, and that's looks like that makes sense. You feel sad. It makes sense you're hurt. Um, and then empathy. I can only imagine what it's like to be you, and wow, it seems really hard right now. And whew, given that I raised my voice and acted like an asshole there, I can appreciate that you feel scared and hurt and alone, and that kind of stuff right there. Those four things will change the course of a relationship if both people do that.
That's really great advice. I love that. I'm just sort of processing it as you said it. Yeah, especially around the pattern of it's great. And if you find that someone isn't ready to empathize yet or isn't in a place to do that, um, obviously boundaries or space can be a good thing. But what are some of the things you recommend when couples are activated or not able to communicate or reach that sometimes?
Yeah, to just say that, honey, I'm not. You know what? I'm really having a hard time here. I need a break, and I will come back because I am committed to understanding you, and I'm committed to making this right and better. So it's okay. We all get blown out. We get triggered and activated to the point where it's really hard to listen. We escalate to the point of shutting down. We just want to run away. None of that's a problem. It's only a problem when we don't communicate it or when we don't return to repair, right? Because
Yeah,
the more unrepaired issues there are, the bigger the pile gets and the harder it gets to clear the pile.
yeah. Great advice. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd love to ask you a few closing questions before we wrap up here. I think this has already been so full of value. Um, if so, this is something I ask my questions to all these guests. There's a couple curveballs, but all fun things.
Yeah, bring it.
So, if your life were a Hollywood film, uh, what do you think? What would the title of it be?
Oof. All right, I'm just gonna go with what came up first was Dragon Slayer.
Nice. Yeah, whatever comes up first, that's amazing. And if your wife were to name this film, what do you think it might be called?
Um, the adventures of the Adventures of the Gaddis family.
Okay. And what is your favorite? Oh, who would you cast as your parents?
Ooh.
You cast
Like
anyone.
which actors and actresses?
It could be anybody. Yeah, you could
Oh,
choose famous actors.
I would ask. I think Clint Eastwood is my dad, and my mom probably a neurotic version of um, that woman in. Oh, did you see Better Off Dead? Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, probably that woman. I can't remember. She
Yeah,
was like Lane was the main character, and the mom was like this like woman vacuuming the house all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And do you have any secret hidden talents or special abilities that most people don't know in relationship school?
Well, I'd say my spoken word poetry, but I'm coming out a little more with that, so it's not so hidden anymore. Um,
Nice. Where can we hear some of it?
yeah,
Do you
it's
have any
on
of it online?
my YouTube channel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Right on. I love it. I love spoken word.
nice. Me too. It's fun. Um, yeah, I'm really into bird watching. My son's way into bird watching. Just not trying to superimpose my values, but he just kids like do what their parents do sometimes.
Yeah.
I love nature and I love art too. So I like to draw with my daughter. I'm pretty good at it. I was, like I said, an art major for a bit, but I could be a lot better. It's like when you stop taking courses in something, you just kind of stop. You don't get that much better. So one day I think I want to enroll back in art classes.
I love that. Well, let's see. Oh, there's one or two other things. Oh, what's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
All right. That's a popular one these days.
Yeah.
We were just remembering Tool today. I hadn't heard that one in a while. Uh,
People call
Toolbox.
that a curse word?
What's that?
People call that a curse word?
I don't know. Just one of those words from,
It can be a strong put down, right? He's such a
yeah,
tool. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be the toolbox.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then if I think, let's see. Yeah. Um, the last thing I want to ask you is if you could give the world one gift today, what would you give us?
Probably the gift of being a great listener. Yeah,
And if
I'd
we
want
were
more people.
all,
I'd want more
sorry,
people to
didn't mean to
listen.
interrupt as you were talking about listening. Continue.
It's okay. I'd want more people to listen so that more people feel accepted for who they are and understood.
And if everybody was listened to, what do you think might be possible? What do you see everyone doing that they may not be doing now?
I think they'd be more courageous to be their vulnerable, neurotic selves, goofy, silly, um, scared, insecure. They'd just be whatever they're being that day, and they wouldn't have to feel like they got to protect themselves all the time.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for that. I really thank you for your time and for being here on the show. If you liked what you heard, if you want to get a hold of Jason, you can go to his Instagram, Jason Gaddis, Jayson, and I have all of that in the show notes on this live in the comments, and it'll be on our emails and on the podcast episode, which should be coming out in the next couple weeks. So thank you so much for listening, supporting, and subscribing. And Jason, thank you again for that gift. And it was great to have you on today. Would you give us a dude, you're getting well to the camera before you go?
Dude, you're getting well.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I hope to see you again in the future. Stay in touch. If there's ever any way I can support you, Jason, and what you're up into in the world, let me know. And thank you all. Until next time. Take care,
Yeah.
dudes.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.